In her recent speech, the President of the European Commission said something remarkable, also remarkable in the context of talking about social protection. In her words, "I want next generation EU to kickstart a European renovation wave and make up our union a leader in the circular economy. But this is not just an environmental or economic project. It needs to be a new cultural project for Europe. Every moment has its own look and feel, and we need to give our systemic change its own distinct aesthetic to match style with sustainability. This is why I will set up a new European Bauhaus, a co-creation space where architects, artists, students, engineers, designers work together to make that happen." I think it is remarkable as well in the context of social protection, social policy, and the general outline what we are talking about, because what she does as well, or what she did as well, she juxtaposes the concept of a European Union by disaster or by design. And by design means to work together in a multidisciplinary way. I only want to concentrate really on one aspect that makes up an important future part of social investment, of social protection, sorry. Maybe typical that I said social investment, because this is the main keyword for social policy in Europe, although I think it is wrong or it has to be reinterpreted, and this is what I will try to do in the short time I have. Still some general remarks in advance. There are at least 3 dimensions of social protection. The one is concerned with the non-tangibles, those who are outside, standing outside of society completely, and that had been characterized by the Pope Francesco when he talked about the throwaway society, those who are standing outside. There is another that is concerned with the normal, whatever this normal is, even if it is not normal, even if it is and had been always the exception, built on the full-time employment, lifelong employment, and that had been more or less equaled with the social security, social insurance state. And then there is a third one, and this is the future normal, of which we do not really know what it would be like, and of which we only think in many cases of by way of extending the current state of affair. There is another dimension, or there are other 3 dimensions. Social protection is about protecting human beings in terms of social insurance, unemployment insurance, health insurance, and these things. But it is as well a protection of the employers. The employers' protection, not least discussed often in connection with the competition policies of the different member states, and of course globally. And then there is a third dimension that is about the social protection of the system, of the state, and of the way we are establishing a society. The famous policy by Bismarck on the stick and carrot strategy. Now, I don't want to engage in all these different aspects. I simply don't have the time, but I want to concentrate really on one of these aspects that is coming up in connection with digitalization, and artificial intelligence. It is only a small part, at least at the moment. It is a small part that is, in many cases, overestimated, if we look at the simple figures. But it is an important part because it is not about just what digitalization is obviously about, but it is about an overall change of working conditions, working orientations, but going beyond this small part that is indicating a future society, a future division of labor, and a future shape of what society we actually are looking at. Let me start with a quote from the report of the high-level expert group on the impact of the digital transformation on EU labor markets. Right at the beginning, they state, digitalization is driving rapid changes in the labor market, influencing the nature, quality, and productivity of work. European leaders face the challenge of making use of these developments to foster economic growth and employment, while at the same time ensuring decent working conditions, social protection, and equal opportunities for all. I'm wondering, why is there this sequence? What justifies this sequence? And shouldn't we think about it in a different way, starting actually from the tail, and saying it is about the labor market, but it is about how people are living together, what they need for their protection, and actually what society we are looking for and we want to shape. This is always highlighted, that economic policy, employment policy, and is there for the people and not the people for the system, for the economic system. So what society are we looking for, and what is the general outlook, not in terms of statistics? If we look at the statistics on digitization, we find for everything a proof. But what is the outline of the society we are looking for? Philosophers, that is well known, had been interpreting the world in different ways, and it is important to change it. The famous 11th thesis of the Feuerbach. Now we can say economists looked in different ways at the production of commodities and the measurement of wealth in terms of what is produced as commodity, instead of thinking about the need to change the understanding of wealth and to overcome actually what employment is about, what the economy is about, that it is not just about the production of commodities. I think what is urgently needed in this context, and I'm talking about these issues as economist and as well as somebody who is engaging now in the legal perspective for the future of Europe, for the future of social protection. Let me start with the first point, work. We are usually talking about an employment society, but we do not consider as valuable, as valued, what is taking place outside of employment. It is the simple reference to GDP, and is the difficulty of our societies fully acknowledging what is taking place outside of the employment system as valuable. It is about care work. It is about political engagement from the basis, for instance, in terms of voluntary work. It is about all these things that play a huge role in shaping our societies, in shaping the values of our societies. And what the economy usually does is externalizing costs, externalizing these issues to be fulfilled outside of the economic system, of the employment system, instead of saying we value this not as an own approach to value creation as a matter of producing commodities, but we widen the understanding of what the economy is about. And the economy is basically about time. Time is at the core of it, and the use of time, and in this respect, not least, the use of time, the distribution of time between that is bound to commodity production, that is bound to what is necessary, and other things that are located outside of the system. This is important when it comes to new forms of employment, the new forms of work actually, and the new forms of understanding what we are doing, that is in many cases, when we look at digitization, not about here employment, here production of commodities, and there what is called work-life balance. But it is a new unit, a new understanding where the term prosumer as well comes into play, so that somebody produces at the same time while he is consuming. And this brings me to the second point, the question of data. Data extraction and production are something that are hugely important in terms of something that is socialized, because we are producing these data by being together with others, by interacting with others, by, for instance, ordering on Amazon or something like this. It seems to be a completely private act, but it is a social act. The appropriation of the result is, of course, then privately. Something we have to rethink, and as well to rethink in terms of the valuation of what we create and what we protect. A third point is about justice. Decent work is one of the key words frequently used, and I think it is important to rethink justice as well as a matter of what is called in economics the value chains, and what is in actual fact in many cases the poverty chains. We produce in exploitative ways here and profit from the benefits there. Something that doesn't work globally, that doesn't work within the European Union, because what we actually see is not a convergence of wealth, but we find a huge divergence. And it is one between different member states, but it is as well, and this is happening since the beginning, that there is a divergence within the countries. Although we may say that the rising tide lifts all boats, we still have the fact that some boats are at the very top and others had been lifted a little bit, but still and are increasingly at the margins. So growing inequality is something that is quite normal within the framework of this system. Social protection steps in, and this is something what we see. It steps in, more and more people are depending on some form of social protection, social security system, social insurance. This is now again privatized instead of acknowledging that all this is a process of socialization, of society taking over, but as well of reacting within society. And then there is really this point of decency. Decency, I want to understand here, as a fourth point, as a matter of what is usually called work-life balance. But as I said earlier, we do not have this clear distinction anymore. And in this way, we have to rethink as well this aspect of balancing work and life. We have to integrate it in a new way. We have to support the creative moments of work. And I'm speaking now of work, meaning we have to link and co-join these aspects of protection, of looking after each other, of communication, of not artificial intelligence, but enhancing intelligence. This is an important point that requires new forms, really new forms of social protection as well. It is now about 20 years, nearly 20 years ago, that there had been the discussion of cost of non-social policy. And it had been about investment, it had been about the increasing productivity due to social investment, due to social policy. I think today the question has to be raised in a different way, and we have to ask today not about compensation for losses, but we have to rethink the concept of productivity. Because with the new forms of work, with digitization, with artificial intelligence, we cannot apply the old traditional concept of productivity. It had been very easy, very simple to say productivity is about how many commodities of this and that kind are produced within this and that time. Of course, then you apply the different dimensions of division of labor and international global division and so on and so forth. But it had been all about this kind of productivity. Non-material goods require a different understanding of what productivity is about. Non-material products, miniaturization, requires a different understanding of what growth is about. Moore's law, we all know this, the acceleration of speed, the smaller units producing in a way more, processing more data. But the problem is not this kind of miniaturization. The problem is really about what is actually done with the data and how do we understand these data. Is it a matter of private data? Is it a matter of social data? Of course, social protection, data protection plays a huge role, but the social protection is much more important in terms of who is controlling the use of the data. And as long as we have this contradiction, social production, private appropriation, in respect of what is going on today, digitization and artificial intelligence, we will have problems as well with social protection. Because what we find today is very simple. If we look at, for instance, Uber or these driving services, we have the social production of data in our being together, and at the same time we have the private appropriation by those who are actually not employing people, who are claiming that they are not providing driving services, but only the distribution. It may be correct in technical terms, but in terms of what is actually going on, it is quite different, because we have new forms not of employment, but new forms of valuation lives. So I really want to highlight, when we talk about social protection, we really have to look at a new dimension of this social protection. Einstein supposedly said something like, the purest form of madness is to leave everything as it is, and at the same time to hope that something will change. The purest form of madness. But this is what we are actually about to do. We are maintaining the old system of private social protection. We are protecting individuals. Of course, with money from socialized, if you want, socialized sources. But we are not really protecting this way of living together. We are protecting people working as individuals. So what we have to think about really when it comes to social protection is the socialization of goods. I mentioned Uber, I did not mention Airbnb, but we have there exactly this problem of public goods, transport, accommodation that is privatized today. Uber making the profit, not the driver. Airbnb, whoever is behind it, making the profit. Booking.com making the profit, but not the small owners of accommodation. Where I live, there is supposedly a rate of 40% Airbnb accommodation that is not available for the citizens, that is social space used for private speculation. There is another aspect. It is about social consumption. Social consumption in terms of what is actually behind the idea of sharing economy, which is perverted today. If we take it as a real development, a real advancement, there are huge and very important implications for social protection. Because then social protection is a social good. And good now understood not as matter of commodity, but as a good of society. And then we come to social distribution. The distribution of spaces, integrating different communities, integrating living together, integrating what had been the firm here and the private space here, new ways of making use of space and locating ourselves within it. And then we come, of course, to the fourth dimension of exchange as a social process. We find huge potentials and sometimes realized potentials. But should we be more radical in this respect and think about exchange by way of new forms of organizing the entire mode of production, not least by looking at cooperatives as a matter of social production, social exchange, social distribution. And then, of course, the question is, who is paying for it? Is it really only a matter of the social insurance we put into the system and we get something out of the system? Or is it a matter of a completely different way of organizing, of looking at the rewards we get from our work, not employment? In a reader edited in connection with the German presidency. There is a conversation between Frank van der Broeke and Rolf Schmachtenberg, the former Belgian Minister of Labour, and she is as well a researcher, and the State Secretary, discussing challenges for social upward convergence in Europe. They are speaking. Schmachtenberg, namely Schmachtenberg, is talking about a union of strong social states. But at the same time, he is speaking of the social insurance state. I'm wondering, should we continue to think this as closely and irresolvably linked? Or shouldn't we think about especially basic income, unconditional basic income that secures existence of everybody based on his, her existence within society, everybody delivering something. I'm hesitating to use this term, delivering. Everybody being part of this society and contributing to this society. They are as well talking about the opportunity, the possibility for every member state to deliver in the forms that are historically developed nationally. But I think what they do not emphasize enough, they are talking about a good life as the common denominator. And this good life is something we have to rethink as economic and juridical legislative aspect. The good life as obligation. Minimum income is one aspect. As I said, basic income, unconditional basic income is another aspect. The new understanding of not the division between labor, not the division between labor or work and life, but a new way of looking together. Home office is the keyword of the recent experience, and I think we have to look at this as well in the future, with huge implications, of course, and requirements for social security. It is not about you give so much and you can take out so much out of the system, but it is about a new understanding, a completely new understanding of what social protection is about. It is about the protection of our social existence within society. It is about, of course, developing things according to our historical understanding and historical ways of doing things, but it is really about something different. And I want to quote again Einstein, or refer to him: the purest form of madness is to leave everything as it is and still to hope that everything will change. This will not work. We need a radical new formulation of social protection, being social protection for our existence in society, being protection of our societies, and not being about new forms of protecting and securing the existence of individuals. Thank you.